Testing. 1, 2, 3. Testing. Oh. Hey, YouTube. I'm a little bit late today. Can I get a sound check from someone? I'm running behind today. And I have no axe to grind. I'm dependent on you guys to give me some topics to ramble about today. It's beginning to look a lot like summer outside. It's cooler today where I live, but we're definitely headed into the warm part of the year again here in the United States, here in the central United States. And that creates some issues for our fish once again as we swing from colder weather and dependent on our heaters to warmer weather. There are fish that require cooler water temperatures. The fish that have been collected from Peru pretty much like the water in the 70-degree range. Hey, Cobweb Caverns, welcome to the stream. Is my audio okay? There are several ways that one can go about trying to keep a fish room cool. Can run a Thanks, Cobweb Caverns. You can run an AC unit in the fish room, or you can have open windows. You can have an evaporative cooler. There are several ways that you can cool down air in a fish room. If you have your tanks open as opposed to covered, you can run a fan over the surface of the water. It will cause more evaporation, tank water evaporation, than is normally occurring. But if you're trying to keep that water cooler, a fan over the tank surface will add to the evaporative process, which cools the water down. A lot of fish require temperatures in the 80s. Hey, Ray's Fish Room. Hi, Dwayne. I enjoyed your So I Got a Fish Tank series. Nice idea. I'm glad you liked it, man. It just felt like to me something that I should be doing, that I've spent so much time on YouTube and I've never really directly aimed at someone that was new to the hobby. And I feel like as fish keepers, it's our job to outreach to people that are new in the hobby and try to help them along You know, I figure every fish keeper that we can save is one that we'll have in our group later on. You know, there are a lot of ways that people end up bombing out of this hobby that that have a bad experience when they get a fish tank, and instead of it being something joyful, it ends up being something painful and something they'd rather not ever experience again. And they put that fish tank in the garage and it collects dust until it gets thrown out or someone notices the tank that keeps fish and asks for it or buys it or something. I just, if if I could just be standing over their shoulder when they actually make that fish tank purchase and whisper advice in their ear, I feel like I could help them out. Maybe not. Maybe it's delusion on my part, but I feel like I could save them some trouble, and so that's what I hope to do with that series, was to give them a chance to not make some mistakes or to better understand what the situation was. Uh, I don't know. I've not gotten a whole lot of feedback on the series, but I appreciate that feedback. So what's going on with you guys this weekend? What's up with your fish rooms? Uh, Things are going along fairly well in my fish room. I need to do water changes. If you listen closely, you can hear one of my wave makers sucking air in the background slightly. I need to get out and get another bottle of Prime. I'm just about out of my dechlor. It's a job to keep up with fish keeping. You have to think ahead about when you're going to be out of products. You have to, you know, most of us need to watch our money, dependent on our income, of course. But Cobweb Cavern says, I've got to find somewhere to get rid of my cories. Time to move them on. My best advice is local clubs, Cobwebs. I'm not sure. I can't remember exactly where you're located at, but if there is a local club that has a um, web board of some sort, you might post them on that. Um, if you could go to an auction, you can sell them off. Of course, cories probably are not going to go well until they're like half-inch long or something like that, or better. You know, they've got to be of a certain age. Um, I'm trying to think if I've ever tried to move young cories before, and I don't think that I have. Scotland. Now you got me there. I'm not familiar enough with Scotland to know what your local clubs might be. Although there are I've seen a bunch of really lively Sadly, they are based on Facebook, which has cracked down on all pet sales. Huh. I guess maybe Facebook is doing that because there's some shysters that have been on there mis-selling or something like that. That's an interesting little insight into Facebook in the United Kingdom. Uh, they've obviously had. I would Google Scotland pet fish sales and see what popped up. I'd try to find local boards. I'd try to find some sort of local community. Yeah, it might be pressure from PETA. Uh, a lot of jurisdictions are literally trying to close down, and this is true in the United States, I know. How it goes outside of the United States, I don't know as well. But there are a lot of local jurisdictions. Yeah, shops are a good place too. Um, a lot of jurisdictions, they've shut down pet stores selling puppies, and a lot of them have shut down pet stores selling kittens or cats. There's a lot of movement in legislatures across the United States for sure. And I've seen this in several and heard about it in several um, um, talks from different people. There is a movement afoot to curtail sales of live creatures in pet stores. And in the United States, I am sure of because I've heard about it quite a bit. They there's a bunch of reasons why they're doing it. Abuse, um, pet mills. They're trying to close down certain bad avenues in the pet hobby, and you can't really blame them for that. The people that are behind the push to shut this stuff down, but it's sad. It's sad that we as consumers are not going to have the options out there to buy certain pets at pet stores anymore because of bad things like puppy mills and bad actors that are doing things that are causing that side of the hobby to be more difficult. My only real experience with having a ton of fry to sell was in the 70s, and I was trying to line breed Jack Dempsey's, and and I had thousands of Jack Dempsey fry because I was getting 600 or 700 a pop. Hey, Corona Ken, welcome to the stream, man. My wife got your email a while back, and I just wanted to let you know that I am doing well, and I appreciate your checking up. Um, I dare say that they have animal welfare at heart, but it is sad, as you say, that they punish everyone. Yeah, the way that sort of thing works itself out is usually to the detriment of the hobby instead of to the benefit of the hobby. It's unfortunate that that's how stuff like that works out. Um, I basically ended up, I saturated my local market, which in the 70s in Dallas, Texas, which is the area I was living in, there were a ton of live fish stores. I've only really recently begun to realize how lucky I was to be in that area, to have that many different live fish stores around me, to be able to just pick and choose and come and go to. I think I had about five really good local fish stores within about a hour drive of me in Dallas. And I didn't know. Hey, Joseph, welcome to the stream, man. How's Joseph doing on this fine weekend? I hesitate to ask, but how's Elliot? I fear the worst. Um, I'm not sure exactly what to attribute the 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 sharp drop off in live local fish stores. Um, Water changes. Yep. Um, but I really did have quite a few places that had remarkable um, fish incoming. Um, there seemed to be just a ton of new fish that were coming into the hobby at that time. It was like new stuff was being discovered every day, and it was available. Um, Importers were just pouring new fish into the hobby, and all of these fish stores in Dallas seem to be getting tons of new stuff in. I remember seeing the first threadfin rainbows. I remember when the zebra plecos first showed up in the store. Um, it, it, and I'm saying plecos, I guess is what I should be saying. I don't know that I'm ever going to get used to saying pleco instead of pleco. I guess I'll be up in some public forum at some point and get booed for saying pleco. Um, I just basically was, after I saturated the market, I think I was getting 25 cents a piece for those Jack Dempseys at 3/4 of an inch. And it takes a while to get a young fry. You know, you have 600 or 700 fry in a swarm, and you raise them up to 3/4 of an inch, and you probably have, maybe 200 or 300 if you're lucky left over by then, or at least that's how it worked out for me. The 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 it cost a lot food wise back then to feed that big of a swarm, and it also took a lot of tank space to 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 keep that many fry growing out. And Cobweb says he'd happily just trade fish off, even just give them a good home. I gave away all I could. I sold all I could, and basically what it ended up being was that I would bring 300 or 400 into one of those fish stores, and they knew me. They knew I had tons of Jack Dempsey babies, because I had about 6 or 7 good pair breeding for me, and 6, 7, 800 a pop, and I would just take them in and give them to the store owner and get credit. And basically, I was using my credit to buy new fish. Um, it got me a lot of fish that I otherwise probably wouldn't really have afforded, and food. I was basically supporting raising all those fry by trading them into the store for credit that I was able to use to buy food. And I had good fish, and I took good care of them, so they they always seemed to be glad to take another 100 Jack Dempsey babies from me. They sold a lot. Uh, uh, Jack Dempseys are really a gorgeous fish. If if any one of you have never kept um, cichlids, have never kept a larger cichlid, um, I would definitely recommend Jack Dempsey's to you. They are highly personable. They get to know you. They do their level best to train you as their owner as to when they want food and where they want food. They have incredible um, mating behaviors, um, and they have just remarkable um, parenting behaviors. Jack Dempsey's will dig a series of pits in the substrate, and they will move that cloud of fry from one pit to another. And it's basically been suggested that they are cleaning the fry, that they suck a bunch of fry into their mouth and swish water around them really quickly, and then they spit them into the new pit, and that they are cleaning their fry and watching, a swarm of 400 little tiny babies being sucked up and then swished around in their mouth and spit back out into a new pit. It can really be wonderful. Um, Cobweb says that he was thinking of going for a pair of Oscars as his next breeding project, but might go for a pair of Jack Dempseys instead. Never had them. They're remarkable. Uh, it, it, I mean, they're not without their own problems. They will completely rearrange their tank. They will put all of the gravel on one wall of the tank. So I highly recommend that you put down an inch or two of substrate and then put egg crate down, light diffuser panels, the square light diffuser panels down into the substrate, cut it to fit the tank and drop it down into the substrate, and then put another inch or two of substrate on top of that. Goodness. Because they're going to dig it up. And unless you put something down that stops them, you're gonna see that tank rearranged completely. Definitely, you need to strongly secure the heater in their tank, because they may decide it's a interloper and attack it. They're I had a pair of Jack Dempseys that were about 6.5, 7 inches long, that would literally, at the time I had two chow chow dogs, and they would literally, they saw those chows as some kind of predator, and they would chase those chows from one end of the tank to the other, attacking the glass, trying to attack those chows. They did not like my chow dog. They recognized me as food, as the person that brought them the food. Yeah, Shelley's will do the same thing, but with Shelley's, it's going to take a couple of days before they really rearrange the tank. A Jack Dempsey will do it overnight. You'll go to bed and get up, and there'll be 16 inches of gravel on one side of the tank and nothing across the whole rest of it. They are nothing if not industrious, and they're really a remarkable fish. They're really a personable fish. Anyone that keeps them will learn. Yeah, they're much larger and much more. What's the word I'm looking for? Much more pugnacious. They're just really. Wait till you get two full-grown fish and try to put them together to get them to breed. It is an all-out battle for two Dempseys to breed, a male and a female. The female will not breed with the male until it is sure that that fish is just as powerful and just as pugnacious as it is. I've had females kill males. I've had males kill females. They do not mess around when it comes to picking a mate. Once they're mated, it's hard to break that unit up, though. They mate for as long as they're in the same area together, they stay mated. You can break them up by moving them into different tanks and then putting them back together again, but I wouldn't recommend that. I'd recommend once you get a mated pair that you take almost every other fish out of that tank because when they get ready to breed, it's going to be all the other fish in the tank jammed up against the glass on one end of the tank and the Dempsey pair on the other end of the tank. They don't mess around. So yes, it's a different experience than those of you that are used to much smaller cichlids or I don't know, less aggressive fish. It's not that they're so aggressive. It's not that they go around killing every other fish, but they will kill every other fish. They're quite capable of it. It's their territorialness. They just really don't want anything. I mean, once you see a swarm of 500-600 fry swimming around in a tank, you'll understand that for the parents to defend them, they've got to make sure that there's no fish in their area because, you know, those fry are going to get picked off one by one by even very small fish. Tetras could eat a baby Jack Dempsey. But it is a remarkable experience to go through that process with them. Choosing a mate, setting up housekeeping, going through their parental antics. I highly recommend them. You know, and if you go for a jaguar cichlid instead, you're just dealing with a much larger version of it. Although jaguars, in my experience, are a little more nasty than Dempseys are. They're just that way. They are a mean fish. Dempseys are mean, but jaguars, when you get into jaguars and dovi and some of the amphilopas, some of those fish are just straight up nasty mean. They will systematically hunt and kill anything in the tank with them, some of them. So it depends on the personality of the fish. I've had Dempseys that were perfectly fine in a community tank. that as long as there was never any breeding, hey Pam, welcome to the stream. Uh, that that just really weren't very mean spirited nor aggressive. You know, our fish are individuals unto themselves, just like we're individuals unto ourselves. And while it might not be so pronounced in fish, they have different personalities. If you watch watch them closely, if you observe their behavior, they have different places on the pecking order of what's in the fish tank. They are their personalities are either more evident or less evident depending on how dominant they are. But even the subdominant fish in a tank still exhibit personality if you watch them closely. So it can be quite the experience to keep a larger cichlid like that, to to watch nature in effect in a large way. Um, my experience with Oscars has not been very good. I, 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 I know there are people that love them, that dearly love Oscars, but they never really attach themselves to me like they do to a lot of people. A lot of people just fall in love with an Oscar. I find that they are really messy eaters, that they really destroy a tank, and that you need to be Johnny on the spot doing water changes with an Oscar because their digestive system really doesn't digest the food very well. So the waste in an Oscar tank can really be high. But you know, it's whatever floats your boat. You know, if you fall in love with an Oscar, they have incredible coloration. They have massive personalities as well, and and they're a beautiful fish. It's just everyone has different tastes, and Oscars just never really struck me. Not like Dempsey's or Jaguars or Dobai or any of the other really large fish. Cobweb Caverns asks, can you have a planted tank with Jack Dempsey's? Well, you can have it for about a day, and then you're no longer going to have a planted tank. You're going to have a bunch of gravel piled up on one end. And I'm saying this, Cobwebs, but it's a generality. And what I did was, if I wanted heavy planting in a tank, I would plant several plants in a large pot and put heavy rocks on top of it, and that would usually fend them off. I've actually had them lay eggs on a plant pot in a tank, just a terracotta plant pot. Um, I've used large halves of terracotta plant pots to give the female a cave to get away from the male from. So you can have plants, but you're not going to have them in normal substrate unless you happen to get a fish. You know, if you've got a heavily planted tank and you put 6 baby Dempseys in there, you might end up with, 4 or 5 fish out of that grouping that don't really dig. It's possible. You just can't say until you experience them. You know, they may grow up with those plants being in place and see them as native and not for them to dig up, but I doubt it. I highly doubt it. Back in the day, we still believed in feeding live fish, and the goldfish that we could go and buy at the pet store were not so mistreated that they were dangerous to our fish. They were still dangerous to our fish because any fish is going to have a potential of some kind of disease, especially feeder fish that are raised poorly at best. But I've actually had a tank full of Jack Dempsey's, 150 gallons worth of Jack Dempsey's, and dropped in a whole bag full of feeder fish from the pet store, live feeder fish, and had one of those feeder fish survive and have that goldfish grow up with a whole tank of Jack Dempsey's. And literally, once it becomes a fish that they recognize as belonging there, once it has survived that long, they often won't attack it. It's no longer seen as a food fish. It's seen as a tank mate, you know, and that's pretty much in a situation where there are enough individuals to disperse the aggression, where nobody's particularly being picked on too bad. If you get one that's being bullied or darn near killed, you need to get that fish out of the tank, and you can have a large tank of Jack Dempsey's with 10 or 15 individuals in it. That as long as you're watching it, as long as you keep an eye on it, it's almost a community tank, because there's a swarm of Jack Dempsey's in there. There's an ability to disperse aggression, and one individual doesn't get picked on so much. Now, you need a lot of caves for different individuals to hide in, a lot of rock work for them to get behind. Dempsey's can be very shy. I've had individuals that really did not want to see you, that if you were in view, they were not. So, cobwebs, I would suggest to you that if you are, unless you're going to get 6 young individuals, because that's the normal size grouping to get. If you're looking to get a pair, you get 6 little ones, and you should get lucky and get a pair out of those 6. Doesn't always happen, but you should get lucky and get a pair out of those 6. You can buy 3 from one store and 3 from another, hoping to widen your bloodlines a little bit. But however you put together a small grouping, if you get them young enough, inch and a half, and put them in a tank that's well established, they may do just fine. It's possible. But my experience is such that you're probably not going to keep those plants in the ground. The substrate, they're going to rearrange that tank to suit their needs. Anybody else have any questions or topics to broach? You've pretty much exhausted me on Jack Dempsey's, although I could go on and on and on and on about the breeding behaviors. One of the things, breeding certain types of fish is something that we, more than just basic level hobbyists, spend a lot of time thinking about. And we're always talking about the different triggers that will set fish into motion in breeding, whether it's hormones, whether it's the weather, whether it's low water suddenly becoming cleaner and more food prevalent, high water, like the changing of the season, going from dry season to wet season. One thing that doesn't get talked about very much in the hobby, because it's not really a great subject, is that fish that feel like they're about to die, that fish, hey Lumpy Dog, welcome to the stream, man. That fish that are in such terrible conditions that they feel like they're about to die, that they recognize that they're fading fast. Think about this. Fish sometimes in the wild get into situations where the water pool that they're in starts drying up, and they recognize that there's less and less oxygen in the water. A lot of times, fish that are in that predicament, that are afraid that they're going to die and not pass on their genetics to progeny, will immediately go about trying to breed as hard as possible. It's completely alien to what we normally think of as breeding behaviors, in the sense that fish normally have to be fattened up and have the perfect mate and have all the parameters be perfectly correct. But that doesn't always happen in the wild. Sometimes in the wild and sometimes in our tanks, people that are not doing their husbandry very good may put fish in such a stressed situation that that fish immediately starts trying to breed, to pass on its genetics, to keep the species alive. Nature finds a way, and sometimes it's not perfect breeding parameters that cause fish to try to breed. Sometimes it's terrible parameters that the fish perceives as imminent death, and sometimes they will try to breed. I have had, like I was talking about. Sorry, Lumpy Dog. I've thought about this several times when I've been talking about, breeding triggers. But I have had several experiences where, like I had a pair of Jack Dempseys that I tried to start, and the male literally skint the female, literally just ripped the scales right off of that female overnight when I wasn't able to watch it and stop it. I had been watching their breeding behavior up until that point. That male literally stripped that female of scales. And I just knew I was going to lose her, that she was going to die. But she didn't. She was still alive and still spunky enough to defend herself enough to stay alive. And as soon as I saw what was going on, I got her out of that tank into a group tank that I had. Well, no sooner did I put her in that group tank, in that terrible shape that she was in, within 2 or 3 days, she had bred with another Dempsey. She was so beaten up and so sure that she was going to die that she immediately went about trying to breed. I didn't get to watch any of the pre-breeding antics, because it never occurred to me that might happen. And sure enough, she laid a whole plaque of eggs and raised them up. So it's yeah, Lumpy Dog says being rehomed will do it too. Yeah. I guess that would translate to fish in the wild as like a natural dam breaking and all of the water in the area they're in suddenly being somewhere else and them getting swept along in the process, or maybe super floods like in the Amazon where all the local area that's low lying suddenly becomes inundated with water, and suddenly there's new areas for fish to get into. So yeah, I guess rehoming would be a potential trigger too. It's not one that I would normally think of. It's not one that I would suggest as advice to other fish keepers, that they stress their fish near to death, or that they rehome that fish 20 times in a row to try to get them to breed. That's not one that I would normally suggest, but it happens to be one that actually works sometimes. Sometimes you never know what the trigger is going to be for a fish to breed. All right, guys, we're 47 minutes in here. It's a little bit early, but I think I'm going to wrap this up. I obviously need to spend a little bit more time working on a topic here. People are going to get tired of hearing me rant about Jack Dempsey's or fish breeding over and over again. I'm old, so I oftentimes say the same thing, tell the same stories over and over again, and I'm unaware of it. So if you catch me doing that, please correct me. Thank you for spending some of your time with me here on Saturday. I hope I've given you some slight piece of information that might be helpful. And good luck with your fish. We'll see you guys later.